cool. Oh yeah, great. Okay, yes.
Our cooperative is called Ways to Live, and we are a living machine co-op, and our mission is actually to broadcast the idea of living machines and bring it outwards to every place possible. Yeah.
So we have kind of several components that we do. So we design living machines and create better ways to build them, and we share those plans on an open platform through open source technology and things like that. We also share we actually practice those things, so we actually build living machines for communities, and then we also run educational programs for local people. So it's we do workshops for and have internships locally, but then we also travel to places to facilitate if they want to start up that, and we freely share our designs. So we make money by our work and time, but the knowledge that we gather is then freely shared as we work together.
Yeah, and the workshops that we give is also not only to kind of share our work, but also to make people aware of what it actually takes to make living machines and take care of them, and to kind of bring awareness of how that actually works, and that it's not just us that is making these living machines, but that we're making it with the people and not just for them.
Should we just go around here real quick with the
camera?
So creating a common good. The biggest thing is just saving and transforming water. So basically water is one of the key components. Water is life, you've heard all of that. And this really is taking kind of a very wasteful system of sewage treatment and turning it from a process of degradation into a living process. So that's there, and then creating common good in communities and educationally, and transforming waste into life. Hashtag not market.
And our care work structures are
multi-stakeholder.
Yeah, our stakeholders would obviously be our users, the government. Also, we have to find a way to work together with them.
We've struggled with that.
Yeah, that's a struggle these last 5 years. And worker owners, so that what does it mean again?
So we're workers, and we also own our own company, so we all have a voice in what happens. There are levels and roles in the cooperative. So some people are site managers or project managers, but they are managing the project, not the people, right? So everybody is able to work with that, and there's often open spaces in which to choose what you would do for that week or that day, so you're not locked into your specific role. And anybody could be a board member, anybody in the co-op could be this, you just have to put your extra time and effort into that. We have free coffee from a co-op that we built a living machine for, so we get free coffee for as long as they and us exist. And
we're also in conversation with the people who work for us, so we work with the need of our people that we work for, so we're not paying everybody the same. We kind of base it on what their social situation is, if they have, how many children they have, and kind of these things. So it's really a conversation that we have with people. And we also don't aim for profit or we aim for living wage and not for.
We make a good living wage. We do make extra at the end of the year, and a lot of that is reinvested either in a raise or we decide to do what to do with that together. So we might reinvest it in the company, we might buy more delivery truck, things like this. Moving on to create commons and pro bono work. We do one free installation a year at cost, so we have to raise the money for materials through grants or work with the community.
Yeah, it would be in cooperation with the community itself that they also do part of this fundraising.
workshops, we've already discussed that.
Yeah.
And then this design global, create local, really thinking and connecting to other, because there's a lot of living machine co-ops out there, and we talk to them and share resources, especially around supply chain, like where we get our resources from. So we need greenhouses, we need big water tanks, we need plant species, and we have a hard time getting all that sourced from other co-ops. So we've worked a little bit with Fab Labs to make some components, but we still need to get big water plastic tanks. How do we get that?
Yeah, and also what we've also been struggling is how to make our materials as fair as possible. Like, where do we get our materials from? Do we use an alternative for plastic? Do we use metal? We're still experimenting with that. And also in regards to what you were saying about the co-ops and how to distribute that, or like be in communication with other co-ops, we also take really good care of not expanding too much, because we really want to just help people and communities itself, and not have another affiliate somewhere else, and so that we really know who we're working with.
Yeah. We expand the ideas of the co-op, not the co-op itself per se. We're growing a little bit, but we're very sustainable. Do we have any things to add or any questions?
Have to move on because we've got more great open co-ops.
In our co-op, we did have some problems. We didn't work that well together for some reason. We are still evaluating what happened, and now we are in this difficult process that we are seeing where we will go from now. But we did do a lot of cool stuff this last 5 years. We thought very wide, you know, and we got this house that was kind of abandoned, and then we put life back into it, and we were oriented towards the common good. So our main purpose was to connect the neighborhoods, like the people from the neighborhood, and make all the neighbors know each other and meet and create together. And we really wanted to embody being sustainable. So we had a lot of interest in our work, so we would use waste and upcycle that things. And our whole place was kind of an experiment in sustainable solutions that were meant to inspire the people who visited. And we also had a cafe and a store, which we used to also provide for ourselves, and in which we sold products from the people in the neighborhood. It's also a way to bring them in. And basically we had this communal space where we had kind of our materials and our tools, but that anyone could use and anyone was free to use, and we taught people how to use them. And we would frequently share this knowledge doing workshops for people in the neighborhood and in other neighborhoods, as also a way to spread it. And then we had every week an open meeting in which all the stakeholders would come. So we had representatives from the communities and the neighborhood. We had people from city council and business owners around also. And to recognize all the care work for everyone that worked there, we had attunements, so that it was very much in the open, how people were feeling. And we had this appreciation list that people would write all the things that they did that would not be that visible. And we would take a moment every day to appreciate that. And yeah, that was kind of it. And there's a little drawing.
Okay, thank you.
So 5 years ago,
Wait a minute, something that I want to ask of everyone, and you can just make it up on the scope. Does your co-op have a name?
yes,
Okay. What was the name of yours?
Waste to life.
Waste to Live.
Live.
And yours?
We didn't create a name.
That's a great name.
Yeah.
We did a great name. Okay.
You decide.
yeah. So our co-op is called House of Abundance,
Mm-hmm.
and it began 5 years ago when we had, similarly to the previous co-op, we had a house in Berlin that we set up as a small community farm, classroom and cafe. It was originally just a cafe with a garden that was self-sustainable, and that members of the local community could come and volunteer at, and also in exchange for volunteer work get food at the cafe and that kind of thing. And then it evolved into a larger thing with a classroom and a makerspace as well. And as it developed, we started to document all of the ways that we were doing things, and the knowledge that we gained through doing that, we began to document, whether that was recipes or ways of growing or things we made and how we made them, but also the ways that we operated and how we set things up. And so after a year or two, we had this resource of how to set up a community self-sustainable education center thing. And so we made that open source so that anyone in the world could access it. And so then people all over the world began to use this resource to set up their own in various different places. We have some in refugee camps, we have some in Australia, all across the world in various different countries, and we have communication between these different networks so that they can all know what's happening in each area. And there's we sometimes have like conferences where people can share information from what they've learned from where they're working and what's working there and what's not working. And we...
So the way that we market this is slightly as two different things. One is this concept of actually a community like Finnhorn, but condensed into one building in a city. So instead of, like, we think of these intentional communities often as like you need this big space of land and a farm and everything, but there are ways of growing vegetables in the city, and we have a lot of competency in that, and we market our knowledge of how to create like intentional community on a pretty much like Finnhorn, only just inside of a city instead, with one building only as the base. And that's also, over time, one of the ways that we generate income, is actually helping people interested in setting up these communities to do that, just that. But the resources themselves is available online as a wiki, as well as we ship Raspberry Pis, which is like free open source hardware with all of this information on, so that people without reliable internet access also has available to this offline.
Yeah, and so that's kind of, what you were saying is that we also offer like courses and classes in how to do this, so that those who can employ us to come and teach, and then that those that can't, we have the funds to then be able to do that pro bono in other places. Yes.
Love it.
Cool. Hi. Our cooperation Coop name is BBC. You see, Best Beer Coop. Our purpose is having fun with good way. Yeah, and we follow like 4 kind of rules, principles. I'll introduce that first, and 5 and 6 steps are problems and how can we solve it and working out. Yeah. First is oriented toward common good. Zero waste production, like eco-friendly. You can see like in that store, like Denmark is like kind of leaf with like stars, yeah. And fair trade, like proper amount of price with like for label, yeah. And organic product and healthy ingredients and produced locally. And second one is multitask holder and recognizes care work. There is graph.
you can see. Yeah, our BBC is local pub, make local pub, and working, communicate with other people, and yeah. Oh, donation. What?
Donation to social initiative.
Yeah, when we got money, we can donate with social donate beer to social initiatives. Yeah, and third one is create commons and probo work. It's for like addicted people, addicted with beer, like yeah, care clinic and local produced and built globally available and run the local pub by pro bono work. And fourth, transnational but locally grounded. Invite beer maker from all around the world, beer making course. And local pub, it's kind of community center. People can gather in there and having a conversation and make some creative things. Yeah, and donating beers to social initiative events. Our problems was strong competitors, like kind of rival. There's a lot of good beer and delicious beer, so we have struggled with that. And we are really, really fair trade and organic, and so our beer is kind of high rate and the price is a little bit expensive. So our solution our working out is unique beer recipe and experience and running well, especially with beer, and making some beer session, how to make it, and they can make their own beer, and also they can make their own labels like Charmis beer or something. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so just 5 years ago, we were just a group of 5 artists who were struggling quite a lot. We didn't really have space to produce our art. We didn't have the social support of having people around us.
Yeah.
But we did
We
really...
had the passion in
We had
the
the
group.
passion
Yeah.
in the group.
It was,
Yeah, it was like this passion that just kind of made us, we found each other, and then we had one of our, they came up like a house, which was next to like a block of land, but we got an artist grant the house was donated.
Yes, the house was actually donated by the local government.
Yeah.
And actually the house was an old like cafe building. So we kind of used that, we got that space. And so we moved. Did we moved in? We didn't move in, but we made that place our like working studio.
Yeah, so we came together as these 5 artists, and there was kind of a mix of people we were a mix of people who did kind of more visual art. We also had some kind of more like hands-based physical kind of making, like we had Viola is a chair maker, and so we created this space, and we created our 5 of us created like a co-op to inhabit this space and start making our art. And we also noticed that we kind of had a shared studio, but we really wanted to open it out to the community because there was, in our area, in our community, there was a lot of people who also were artists but had no space, so we noticed this need for a common space to come and create work together and create a social a space to work in a supported way. And so that was just like the very beginning, and then what happened is that kind of kept building,
And now we are, as you see, like a big community in place. Do you say that? No.
yeah,
In the city, or like at the in the city, and we have here is still like the building, like the building from in the beginning is still there, and now it's like really beautiful, and now here you see very little, but actually there's like more, we build plots extra, so there are more rooms now for like different things that to happen, like different kind of arts to happen. And then we there's also like a movement studio for more visual arts, like performances, and so we also build a stage, and people can also like perform, and that's also like a way of trying to get some income, is like make performances and then inviting people to come there and bringing also in that way aliveness to the community. And
then 3 years ago we also acquired the plot next door because we partnered with the owners of that, who are really keen to kind of start up, like bring life to the local growing in the community, because there was also a need for this. There was a lot of people who wanted local produce but didn't really know how to get it. So then what's happened is we've moved from an artist cooperative, and we've actually joined with this this plot next door. So now there's individual plots that different members of like the cooperative, the community, have their little plots, and what's been created is this hub of kind of cross-pollinating space and community, where we've got art, we've got community hangout space, and we've got like local
garden
growing,
project.
and
What's on the other side?
So our multi-stakeholder is looking at, we've got like the local artists and makers, and then the connecting to the value chain of where a lot of that those materials kind of come from, connecting to a cafe, like the cafe that's part of the building as well, the neighbourhood residents, connecting to like a school youth group where we kind of go and do workshops as artists, so that's a lot of how we make our income as well, and also connecting to the municipality or local government.
What else you said, I think?
Yeah, the commons that we're creating is kind of creating public artworks in the area, documenting the process and having that recorded and open source, so it's accessible for other artists who are looking to kind of create relationships and co-ops, and how they can kind of work together. We create, like, all our events are kind of like filmed and documented and put online like a month after